Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. Today, I have with me Becky Parker Geist. Did I pronounce it right?
Yes, you
Becky
did.
Parker Geist. Okay,
Yeah.
good. She is the founder and CEO of Pro Audio Voices, which is a Portland based company serving client as a go to place for audiobook production and marketing. She's also the producer of the soon to be released Amplify app that offers the highest royalties and most control to authors of audiobooks of any platform in the industry. Her debut novel, The Left Turn Two Lives Words Apart, is the first in the Split Universe series, which explores self discovery. And discoveries in new science. So, Becky, I'm so glad to have you with me today. As a huge fan of audiobook books, I'm really excited and I have a lot of questions for you. So, first, where do we stand when it comes to the audiobook industry?
Well, yeah. So the audiobook industry has been growing for over a decade. And double-digit growth over
Oh, wow.
those 10 years, and it is showing no signs of slowing down. So
Okay.
there's still actually a lot of potential. In the market, it's not like the market is saturated by any means, and
Okay.
so I think we're just going to keep seeing this double digit growth year after year. I don't know when that might slow down, but we do certainly. I see that when people start with audiobooks, most often they fall in love with the format, and it provides a lot of flexibility. It also provides a whole other level of performance that helps bring audiobooks to life. A book brings books to life. And I just think that there are so many benefits, so many upsides to the format itself that then the more listeners we have, the more listening each listener is going to, want to be doing. And so we're going to just keep seeing that growth. It's a great
Mm.
place to be, and an exciting place. Yeah.
Why is that? Why do you think it's growing?
Well, I think
What?
there are several. Yeah, I think there are a lot of
Okay.
reasons. And I do, I'll just, I guess I'll start actually with how the pandemic, I think, had an influence. The the fact that we can listen without having to have screen time these
Mm.
days in our world where we have so much, our eyes are so, spend a lot of time in front of a screen,
Okay.
and that can be tiring. You know, so for one thing, it's a great way to be able to have that entertainment or that input, being able to read without having to use our eyes to do so.
Okay.
But I think for a lot of people, it's about how can I take in even more content? I
Yeah.
hear that again and again from people, just because the format is so flexible, you can be doing something else physical
Yeah.
with your body, your
Yeah.
hands, and your mind can be off in another world
Yeah.
or taking in some new information that you want to learn about. So it's I think just the flexibility of it is tremendously powerful and part of what maybe probably the biggest driving factor.
Hmm. What about the introduction of Bluetooth headphones? The fact that I'm not connected to my phone
Hmm.
with the wire, for me personally, that kind of doubled my listening time because I leave my phone in the kitchen or upstairs and I go downstairs to do the laundry or whatever, and this is always plugged in. And in the past, just the fact that I had the wires and like it added an extra layer of friction. Do you
Yeah.
think do you think that contributed to it?
It probably does. Certainly, as you've experienced, it contributes to the enjoyment of the format. Um, in terms of how much that may have impacted or be impacting growth, really hard to say because I don't know that. anyone's even studying that particular level of detail, but I think it's really cool that you brought that up because you're
Yeah,
right. It's like the easier things are for us because we're doing a lot of stuff. Our minds are busy and our hands are busy, and uh, the less friction we have in a
correct.
process, the
Yeah.
more likely we are to stick with it and grow with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, an AI as well, like Siri on the iPhone, or Alexa on the on Amazon. Just the fact that you can like be running around and then like read or say the command and you're done. And like I'm a busy mom of three kids,
Mhm.
and for me, this in the car, or no, like even with not in the car, but everything I do is I ask Siri to do it. I ask
Mhm.
Siri to like when I listen to the book. So it really helped. So I'm just curious to see. So like listening to books is not new, right? It's been on for a while. So I when we, let's say, 10 years ago or
Mhm.
more, when we used to go on road trips and stop by Cracker Barrel, there's always these, whatever, books on tapes.
Yep.
And it's like I used to look to, like I've never done it. I grew up in the Middle East and I moved to the US 20 years ago. So that was a new concept for me, that people will actually rent a book, put it in the car and listen to it.
Yeah.
And I always wondered about it. I was like, oh my god, that's a lot of logistics, because you have to find the next Cracker Barrel and all of
Mhm.
that. But it's not a new concept, right? But
No, no, and,
yeah.
if you think about it, kind of it's maybe the oldest concept of all, because before we even had printing presses, what were we
Okay.
doing? Oral storytelling.
Correct.
It's how we share our
Ah.
histories, it's how we express what we're experiencing in life, and the storyteller is kinda like the shaman, right? The one who can
Yeah.
weave those tales for us. So I think in many ways, it's the oldest form, and I find it fascinating that now that we are in a technological place where we can take that, and now instead of it just being to the court, or, the group sitting around the campfire, we now have a way to make it so we can record a story in one place, one time and space moment, and it becomes available to millions of people in some other variety of time and space moments. Uh, I
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Because I remember my granddad, who passed away a long time ago. He never used to read to us, but he used
Uh-huh.
to tell us stories, and he used to tell
Yeah.
us ghost stories. And funny, because I remember the ghost story, and I retold it last month as a ghost story at a camping trip. And I told him this was, it's probably over 100 years old story about a man who goes to Damascus to shop for his bride, and he gets attacked by this mystical creature. And so, I mean, the fact that I still remember it because he kept telling us that, and so I
Right.
feel like somehow I preserved the tradition, or I saved that story through telling it. So that is fascinating.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about this platform, Amplify. Has it been released or
It
not yet?
has. Yes,
Okay.
it
If you
has.
can tell us a bit about it, because I'm really curious about it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We released the apps Amplify Audiobooks. It's in both app stores. They were both released in July of this year, so it's still fairly new in terms of that
Oh,
aspect of the platform.
congrats.
Thank you. Very exciting. And it's for many years I've been working in this industry and seeing how the model works for authors who are, getting their books into audio, spending all the time and money and energy to create the book, get it into audio, and then send it out into the world. And as authors, we want to be able to have an impact. We want to share those stories with the world. And what happens in the standard model is that we send them out there, and we have no control over pretty much anything. So,
Okay.
like pricing and and being able to, let's say, like, run a promotion or offer a discount code,
Okay.
and even and this is actually the most valuable piece, is even knowing who buys our audiobooks in,
Mm,
at the end. So we have no way to reach out to those folks. We don't have a way to build community. And yet, we as authors know that that's one of the most powerful things that we can do. But all the tools are taken away from us. So I've always seen this as a problem, and had not been until now in a position where I could make a difference in that. And so, our authors would come to us and say, "Well, how do I market my audiobook?" And the tools were so limited because of this problem. So Amplify Audiobooks is a suite of marketing tools that includes a platform, a direct sale platform. It's a little bit like a mall where each author has their own store. So a little bit like the
mm,
Etsy of audiobooks.
I
So
see.
that the authors have those controls that I just described are not available anywhere else. You completely control your own pricing, coupon codes, that sort of thing. You get to know who bought your audiobook so you can build community with them. And one of the things that matters to many authors, I would say most authors, is also being able to earn some kind of return on your investment. You know, it costs a lot to have an audiobook created.
Yeah.
And that there's good reasons for that. It's a time consuming expertise um, process. So being able to actually earn back on each sale really matters. And the truth in the general industry is that the retailers take this giant chunk out of each sale, and then they leave just the crumbs. The crumbs on the table are for the authors. And that also has felt just wrong. So the retailers are providing a percentage of the net, which is very low, and they don't usually say that, and that's why I say it in that way, because you look at, let's say, Amazon Audible offers, they'll say if you go exclusive with them, which is what they want, they'll give you 40%. They don't say of what, though. They don't say it's of the net. They say they just say 40%. So we'll all assume that means the gross price, and that's not real. So on Amplify Audiobooks, our authors get 65% of the gross price that they set. So it's a
Mm,
huge difference. It's on a real scale, it's like comparing somewhere between like 0 to 20% versus 65%, just because of that
I
net
see.
and gross difference.
What about, like, for me as an author?
Hmm.
I would be worried about taking the risk and not being on Audible. I'm playing the devil's
Ah,
advocate here.
yeah, I
Uh,
know.
because for me, I'm subscribed to Audible, so I get the free credit.
Hmm.
So, and when I think audiobooks, I just think Audible. I don't think anything else. Some people might think Libby, or
Yeah,
they think now Spotify just launched a new thing. I read it
yeah,
yesterday.
they bought Findaway, so yeah. No,
Yeah. So
and yeah,
that's what I think. I just go.
right.
So for me, I feel like it's it's a bit risky to go with a new platform where the audience still not there. Don't you think?
Well, we're not saying only be on Amplify
Ah,
Audiobooks. We're
okay.
saying also be on Amplify Audiobooks. Because here's the thing is that, yes, you should be in all those places like Audible, where your listeners may look for your work. Absolutely. And that's what we encourage our clients to do. But the truth is that most people are only going to find your audiobooks when you're marketing, whatever marketing you're doing, your social media posts, your email
Correct.
marketing. So your our marketing is essentially like directing traffic. Oh, hey, here's
Ah,
my audiobook. Would you buy it over here? Buy it over here. Right.
yeah.
And it's in that direction, when we say buy it here, that you want to send them to your Amplify Audiobooks page and start to build your audience there. And it's true, that yes, we don't have as many people coming to Amplify audiobooks yet because it is new. But
Yeah.
it is through those marketing efforts of each author who's on that platform who are drawing more and more you know, um, listeners to the platform. And in that smaller grouping, you're also become more discoverable. Um,
Ah, I see. So what happens if I go on both, on Audible and Amplify? What do I lose? Like if
well,
I
y
don't say sign exclusively with Audible,
yeah, you don't lose
what
anything. You only win because you're adding a place. As I say, I think it's good to be in all the places where your listeners might show up, right?
mm,
So by having a broad distribution and then also having that Amplify audiobooks as a part of that broad distribution is really valuable, especially if you use it by pointing people to it when you're marketing. And
I
also,
see.
it's, I think, wise to say, please buy it here and here's why, but it's also available at your favorite audiobook retailer.
Okay.
That way people know, oh, okay, well, if they're a subscriber somewhere, they're going to go there anyway. That's just natural. But there is a growing number of there's a growing number of people that are leaning away from Amazon as
Mm,
their
yeah.
source. They
Yeah.
recognize,
Yeah, I've been hearing that a lot on the podcast,
yeah,
especially independent authors. They're kind of
right.
many of them are, frustrated with Amazon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, do you help authors create their audiobooks or just market them?
We came into this, so I like came into the audiobook industry as I had just gotten my MFA in acting. I came into it as a narrator,
Oh, wow. I mean,
talking about.
you have a great voice. I'm
Oh,
just
thank
listening
you,
to you.
thank
It's like
you.
a perfect like radio voice. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I started with talking books for the blind, and it was like back in '81. I mean, so ages ago, but that's when I really fell in love with audiobooks, and
Okay.
so um sorry, I just lost my
The
train of thought.
Yeah. So the question is, do you help authors produce or
Oh,
create
yes, yes, yes,
audiobooks?
of course.
Yeah.
So our core offering for many years, and we're just about to celebrate this month, we celebrate 10 years in business as Pro Audio Voices. So for, I would say, even like the first 5 years, it was mostly, me being solopreneur, but um, the, but still audiobook production, right?
Mm.
And it was really in the last couple years that Amplify audiobooks started to come forward, and also more of our marketing options were coming forward, and they were all developed in response to what our clients were saying they needed. So
Okay.
as we listened to how, what they needed, how can we help? And, I do a lot of networking in the industry and outside the industry, marketing and other business kinds of things. And so uh, I've been able to bring in a lot of expertise to help where our authors were asking for help.
Hmm.
So, yes, in terms of audiobook production, that's something that we love
You're still
doing.
doing. You're still
Oh,
doing.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. And
Okay.
everything from single narrator, full cast, children's books, nonfiction, fiction, the works. We love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for the sake of anyone who's listening or watching, I'm an which is me. I'm an independently published author or self-published author. I wanna have my book as an audiobook. I'm a starving artist. Let's say this. I'm playing the devil's. I am a starving artist, but I'm also playing the devil's advocate. Is For me the idea of spending thousands of dollars, if
Hmm.
that is what I hear in the market for
Right.
the audiobook, is a bit intimidating,
Hmm.
and especially when you know that books do not sell that much. So how would you convince me to make that investment, and what kind of packages do you offer
Hmm.
for self-published authors who don't have the backing of the big fours? I guess now they're big five or big four
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
big publishers. Yeah.
yeah. Well, first of all, I guess I would say that I wouldn't. I- we don't like try to convince because we want to make sure that it's going to be the right decision for each
Okay.
person, you know.
Okay.
But
Okay.
what we will do is help you, look at your goals. What are your goals? And will having an audiobook help, could that help you achieve your goals? And one of the things that, you brought up um, the, the question about audiobook sales.
Yeah.
And this is the very place where Amplify Audiobooks makes such a difference. And because authors haven't had the tools to be able to effectively market their audiobooks and get a return.
Mm.
So you could look at this, and people have in our industry have looked at the problem of, oh, authors aren't getting a return on their investment,
Yeah.
and how can we solve that? Well, some people, like BookBaby, for example, they went, well, we'll offer AI narration, because it's so much cheaper. And I don't see
Uh-huh.
that as a solution. I get that it might be for some people, but it's not one that I don't want to listen to an AI narrated audiobook. And I don't think that's the best thing for us as human beings to be.
Can we tell? Can the audience tell it's
Yeah.
AI? Like when you listen to Siri, let's say Siri is narrating the book. Can you tell? It's not.
Yeah. Yeah, you can tell. And maybe some of us can tell more readily than others or more
Yeah.
quickly, but I don't know. I mean, there's a whole other sort of philosophical aspect to
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
question, um But but in terms of looking at that problem, like how do we solve the problem of it being worth it to an author to do an audiobook? Well, if you can't get if you can't if you're not going to earn much back and you don't have any way to um effectively market it in the first place, like you can do social media posts that say, "Hey, my book's on Audible now." You'll never know whether it's been effective, for one thing. If it is effective and you make some sales, the return on those sales is going to be so small that it's negligible for each sale. So those are the problems as I see it from my viewpoint. So I was like, okay, yes, this is a problem. How do we deal with it? Well, let's give the authors the control that they deserve, and the return from each sale that they deserve.
And how do you do marketing differently than, let's say, an author or Audible? What is your marketing magic?
Well, it's being able to have those tools. So if being able to run a promotion, people love sales. I love
Yeah.
sales. I
Yeah.
like, and so being able to do that, even, I mean, that sounds like so basic, and it is very basic, but you can't do that. You
With
can't say,
audiobooks.
tell
Yeah.
Amazon, put my book on sale. Uh, for, they won't do it. You have no
You
control over it.
you can control the price
No, you
of,
can't.
not the audiobook, the paperback.
Paperback,
Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, something like that.
But you
Yeah.
can't control your audiobook price. They don't even with Audible, you can't even suggest the price that you would like. Even if you did, they'd ignore it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you don't have that control. And if you want to just run a promotion, you want it to go on sale, you can't. And you can't do that on any retailer. You just don't have that power. And so being able to have a tool where you can actually say, "Yes, my book's on sale. Get it here at that sale price." That's powerful. If
And
you
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and just like if let's say you're doing an event, maybe it's a book launch event or
Mm.
special holiday, and you want to, or you're trying to add people to your email list, and you want to give them some reward, you could give them a coupon code. You can't do that
Mm.
anywhere else. You, th- there's just no
Yeah.
way.
So, okay. So, what are we looking at in terms of the price? Like, what's the
F-
package?
for production,
For production,
for
yeah, alone.
production. Yeah. It's going to be based on a lot of different things. The most important thing is going to, or the main factor is word count.
Mm.
And then the second biggest factor is it a one narrator or is it like something more, or do you have a bunch of sound effects or music in there, or is it just straight
Ah, I see.
narrative, you know? So the least expensive is going to be your single narrator. And in terms of word count, they're most often, audiobooks tend to run somewhere between like 3 to 7,000. But there's so much range, largely because, I mean, like a children's book, for example, might be 100 words, but, or
Ah,
5 minutes long, but it has lots of music and sound effects to sort of bring it to
true.
life in a different way. Um, and then, a full cast audiobook typically is going to be much more like, 15,000 or something, in that range. But your single narrator is going to fall in that most often, like I say, 3 to 7,000. And then, but there are different ways to do it. So at Pro Audio Voices, for example, we have what's our normal concierge service, which is the way that we love working with authors. It's very collaborative. Author has a lot of say in the process. It's very hands-on, um, and uh, uh, but we do have authors who will come to us and say, what, I really want to do this. I can't afford those rates. And we have a scholarship program that people can apply for that will reduce those rates. Uh, something so,
Mm.
um, your options are narrowed, in that because that's the only way that we can offer those special scholarship rates. But there are different ways. So I'm just putting it out there as there are different ways. And I will say this also because I think in our industry, most production companies are going to give you a per finished hour cost. And we don't do that. We do a project cost. So here's what listeners should know about that going into it. And no matter where you're going to get your audiobook produced, just be aware of this. If you're doing a per finished hour basis, and let's say they say it's going to be $650 per finished hour, and we estimate your book is going to be 5 hours long. Okay. You want to find out what reading pace they're basing that estimated finished length on.
Hmm.
And if you have a longer book, let's say your book is more like 90, 120,000 words, your finished length is at greater risk of growing. Here's why. If a narrator slows down just a little bit, which is common, and not necessarily intentional, but if they slow down a little bit, they're going to get paid more and you're going to pay more as the author. With a project cost,
I see.
going in what it's going to cost you.
I see.
Yeah.
What if the author offers to read their own book?
Yeah, it definitely impacts the price. We do a lot of author narrated projects as well, and we usually are working with them on a home studio consultant basis. So we have
Mm.
a team of home studio consultants that will meet with you and help you get the equipment that you need and get your space set up and make sure that your audio is in good shape
Ah, I
and teach you
see.
how to use the software you'll need, and then we'll work with you on doing all the post production so you don't have to handle any of that.
So it's a bit of a hassle because you have to get all the gear, right? Because
It
you you
is.
you
Yeah.
can't do it like in an open space, right? You have to close the space and all of that, or
Sometimes you can do it in an open space. It really depends on your particular space. I mean,
mm.
it gets when you there are sound engineers who geek out on this stuff. I am not one of them, but I have talked with some of our engineers and they get into, well, the relative dimensions of your booth, like Is it 2 by 3 or 2 by 4? Which way is your mic pointing? And I mean, it gets really there's there is so much fascinating but technical um, elements of sound production
Mm.
that are impacted by all kinds of things. So it's not that necessarily any particular space is going to be better or worse, but they'll work with you with the space that you have to make it the best that
Mm.
it can be. Yeah.
So I have a technical question that
Yeah.
I struggle with. Okay, so most of my books are based in the Middle East, right?
Hmm.
Or between the Middle East and the US. So the main characters are like either moving to the US or to the West or whatever.
Hmm.
And if I narrate the book, it's, it will be accented,
Right.
but it sort of mirrors the authenticity of the characters. But at the same time, I feel this might turn people off because they don't like to hear like an accented English narration. What are the pros and cons of this? Like, would I lose the authenticity, or what is your advice?
Yeah, so I think that first of all, I wouldn't say that it would turn off your audience likely, especially because your audience is choosing
Yeah,
stories that,
yeah,
your character's going through that. So I think it would, I wouldn't worry about that aspect of it
yeah,
at all.
yeah,
If you were worried about, like, say, like like it to be a little bit lighter accent, for
yeah,
example,
yeah.
we can look for a narrator that is going to be able to provide that.
Okay,
And but I do think that the accent would be very appropriate
for
to
the
the
book, yeah.
story based on what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, because if I bring a narrator who has like a southern accent from Alabama, is not like it's not gonna work.
No,
Sorry.
no.
So
You
I
gotta
mean, it's
you always
like,
wanna match the voice to the right project. Yeah, the right voice, right project,
so
yeah.
like, who would you bring? I mean, that's for me is like, how do you pick your the reason I'm asking this, like, how do you pick your narrators for each different topic? So
Yeah. That's a
who,
great question.
where do
Yeah.
you find these narrators that fit these kind of very specific niche or very specific criteria?
Yeah, so we have a casting director who works with
Okay.
us. She works out of New York, and she is wonderful at what she does.
Okay.
And we have currently about over 500 narrators in our talent bank, and they're spread around the world. So we have many different languages available, many different accents available, and that
Okay.
talent bank is constantly growing and expanding. Especially if we have a project where it's like, oh, maybe we may not have that many narrators that sort of fit this voice request, and so we do further outreach, to find
Mm,
voices. Sometimes that's like, hey, narrators who are in our talent bank, who do you know that has this? And that almost always, I think every time we've done that, we've had recommendations that have been really helpful. But
and you
it all
vet them? Do you test them before you sign with them?
we
The
do, yeah.
narrators?
They
Yeah.
have to
Okay.
be vetted through, yeah.
And does the author have to approve it?
Yes, and so the casting process starts with a conversation with the casting director and the author, to where
Okay.
she's asking a bunch of questions to make sure that she has a clear idea of what it is that we're looking and listening for in that voice.
Okay.
And then she'll send out a casting call and a call for auditions for the project using the text of the project. So that, and then she'll vet those initially, so
Okay.
she'll like go through and narrow it down to what she would consider her top, say, 5 or 6 or something. And then and then she'll share that. So it's always going to be the author's or rights holder's choice as to who
Mm.
that narrator is. And it's not always necessarily from the casting director's first choice folder. It might be from, one of the other voices that also came in. But it's a it, it's a conversation about, she'll offer her input as to why she's selected the ones that she did.
Okay.
And but we'll work with authors to make sure that we've found the voice that they feel really good about.
So my question is now with Spotify announcement, is
Hmm.
the audiobook headed towards streaming rather than buying?
Hmm.
And so, which is kind of like if I go to, uh, is it Libby? Yeah, is it
Yeah,
Libby, the one that the Audible? So it's like Libby, but Spotify, where I pay monthly and I stream and I don't have to buy the book like Audible. Because with Audible, the book, you buy the book, right? So the
right.
book
That's right.
stays with you.
That's right.
So what if now the industry is going towards an unlimited streaming rather than buying? Is that where we're headed? Because I'd rather stream, honestly. I
Yeah.
don't like, do you want to own the audiobook? Not really.
I think we're going to have more than one model on, for a while.
Okay.
I don't think we're going to go all one direction.
Okay.
I don't know, as a listener myself, I own many audiobooks, and some of them I've listened to many times because I've enjoyed them
Ah,
so much. Uh,
okay.
so I will sometimes go back to them, even though there's still lots of great listens out there. But I wouldn't. I don't feel the need to own them necessarily either. But I think it's gonna depend on the person as to what model works best for them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because like when it comes to watching movies, people mostly stream, not
Yeah.
buy.
Right.
At least if I look at my habits,
Yeah.
the only time I like rent, if it's like a new release or whatever, but
Hmm.
I just stream. And
Yeah.
I was wondering if that's where we're headed now with audio. It's just something
Yeah.
to think about.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite audiobook?
Uh, I would say I there's so many I love, but,
Yeah,
I'll say of the ones that we've produced,
of
it
course.
might I'll just start there, and it is on Amplify Audiobooks. It's Quantum. It's like a techno thriller, full
Okay,
cast, really,
okay.
really fun project. Um, and then for ones that we have not produced, ones that I've listened to multiple times because I
Yeah.
love them. So Jojo Moyes' 1+1 is one of my personal
Uh,
favorites.
why?
The character development, these
Okay,
characters are so delightful.
okay,
The way that they progress, they're so flawed and yet so understandable. I
okay.
just feel such a wonderful, and I enjoy her dialogue. I think she's a wonderful writer. So I always look forward. I've listened to a lot of her audiobooks. Um,
Jojo Moyes. Okay.
Jojo Moyes, yeah.
Oh wow. So before we go, I want to ask you about your novel. So
Yeah.
you just published a novel. So why did you move from like the audiobook industry to publishing a novel? Was it always a dream of yours to publish, or like where how did
Yeah.
that happen?
Yeah, well, I think from the time I was a little kid, I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be an author. I wrote my first book when I was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something. Um,
Oh, okay.
but, and have written a few, like, nonfiction and children's books. This was my first novel, and I didn't actually set out to write a novel. I was on a bike ride in San Francisco, and it kind of dropped into my head in this one moment when it's like my husband at the time we were on this bike ride, and he was way ahead, several blocks. And I came to this stop sign, and I just had this thought, what if I just turned left? And I didn't, I continued on. But this scene of what if I just the whole
Turn
idea of just,
left.
like,
Yeah.
turning left, it's like, what if I just changed my story? What if I stepped out of the life that I have right now, and what would happen? So, anyway, this scene dropped into my head, and it stayed in there until I finally wrote it down, and then this kept happening, so I had all these stories that was sort of popcorn into my head at various points and forced me to write them down, so I did. And then later I figured out how they all fit together and pulled it together into the novel, The Left Turn. And the funny thing is I can look at it now and say it's about how we change our story to change our lives. But when I was writing it, I don't think I really knew what it was about, except that it was about this person that was, or these, it was a couple, but the female character is the main character, um, and what she was experiencing. I didn't really know what it was about until I was able to step away from it a little bit and go, oh yeah, look at that.
Hmm. Did you self-publish it, or how did
I
you
did,
publish it?
I did, and I published audio first.
Ah,
So
really?
yeah,
And did you narrate it yourself?
I did. Yeah.
Of course.
Of course. It's written from
Ha-
2 points of view, so there's a male point of
Okay.
view, and so I had a co-narrator. And you know
Okay.
what was so funny is because you were asking about casting?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I thought that the casting process, and I went through it with our company, our casting director, and I had about 5 top narrators. I know all of them well. We've done work with each one of them, and each one was the best in a slightly different way. And I had a heck of a time deciding, which one to go with. Any one of them would have been great, and I asked, family members, and they each had a different favorite, and every one of them said, "They're all great." And I knew they were all great.
Yeah.
But, yeah, but I had to come up with a decision. So, J.S. Arquin is my co-narrator.
Hmm. Fun. I love listening to memoirs. I feel like
Mm,
memoirs, you have to listen to them, especially when the author is, because like it's very intimate experience when you
yeah,
listen to somebody's memoirs while you're walking the dog. It was just for me. I just finished listening to The Many Lives of Mama Love. Not sure if you
mhm,
heard about it. It's about a woman who was a heroin addict and then got into identity theft and went to prison, and how she turned her life around. And so it's her memoir, life
yeah,
in
yeah,
prison, all describing addiction. And it's such an intimate experience while I'm
yeah,
walking my dog in the woods, that it's like I will always remember like listening while walking the dog in the woods. It's really
yeah,
nice.
yeah. You bring up a
um
point, though, I wanna touch on, and that is about whether
the author.
authors of memoirs should narrate their own book, and I don't think that is necessary. I don't think it's necessary, and here's why. But many authors expect that they should be the voice because it is
Yeah.
their story and very personal. And my experience has shown me that that doesn't necessarily mean that the author is going to be the best narrator for telling their story,
Yeah.
because it really, a good actor is going to step right into the shoes of that person and experience those emotions and bring that story forth in a way that is like optimal. And n- the authors themselves are not always able to do that, and I would say more rarely are able to do that, simply because it's a different set of skills, and having lived through it does not make you the best teller of that story necessarily.
Yeah.
So
Like David Goggins' memoir is not narrated by him.
yeah,
I'm listening to like three books at the same time,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm also listening to David Goggins. You know David Goggins,
yeah,
who's yeah, and it's not narrated by him. And they did a very different format where they stop, he and the narrator, and or is it the narrator or the ghostwriter, I think, and they just sit and discuss what we just listened to. So
yeah,
it's kind of like a podcast slash audiobook in one format.
yeah,
So it makes it even more exciting to listen to it. So that was like the first time I hear such format for a memoir.
yeah.
But yeah. So Becky, this has been like amazing. And for anyone who's listening, they want to apply for the scholarship. What kind of qualifications they need? Like what would make them get that scholarship.
Well, the
Because
first,
we always
yeah,
like, to help authors and anyone who's listening,
sure,
to
yeah.
to know about this possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the first thing we're always going to start with is just a discovery call. We want to learn about your goals,
Okay.
and that is the first step in the process. And then as we move into a strategy call with an author, that is where we're really looking at, okay, what's going to help you achieve those goals, and it's in that conversation there that if they feel like, if it feels like your content is something that we really care about bringing forth in the world, you have something that is valuable and important to say, and that is most often the case. But there are also times when, someone's like pushing some agenda that is not necessarily uplifting or helpful in the world. And so,
Okay.
you know, uh, they're they're not likely going to land in that. Um, But so we wanna look, are we in alignment? Are we trying to, help you have that impact that you want to have? And and then it's a very simple, application, for that scholarship program, but it's mostly tell us why.
Okay.
Why should
That's
we
good to
give you
hear.
this? Yeah.
And I'm hope many people are hearing this, and I hope you get inundated with the applications.
You know, we
But
we love audiobooks and we love authors, and one of our core values is impact. We want to have an impact in the world, and we know very, very well that the best way for us to have an impact is to help our author clients have an impact. And there's so much great material out there, fiction and nonfiction, children's, the works, that is really valuable.
yeah.
And if we can help bring that forward, then we're having a greater impact in a positive way. That matters.
And one last question: how do I get your voice? like,
I
like how do, how do
do still
I how
I
do I
do
sound
still
like you?
narrate. I do still narrate audiobooks, and I love narrating, so,
Like,
that
how do I sound like you? Like, how
oh,
do you have this charisma, this, like, every word you say, like, it resonates. Like, how do
no,
you do it?
no, thank you so much.
Were you born with it, or did you
You
improve
know,
it by time?
I have, um I think I'm willing to be vulnerable, and I
Okay.
think this really came a lot. It it was a It's a part of actor training, being willing to go to those challenging places, being willing to speak from the heart
Oh,
and to feel the
okay.
emotions,
Okay.
So I think that is probably part of it. Um, it can feel like, sometimes that can feel like a risky thing to do, Yeah, you
Yeah.
never know, but there's I guess it's feeling confident enough in who I am to be willing to say, "Okay, this is who I am." And,
Like
uh,
you're
if you don't like who I am, then that's not gonna feel very good to me, but,
yeah.
I'm still who
Nice.
I am.
It's like you're putting me in the Zen mode.
There you
It's
go.
like, yeah. Well, this been wonderful, Becky. Any last thoughts? How can people reach you, buy your books, all of that?
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, so, best place to reach us for audiobook production is proaudiovoices.com. If you are an audiobook listener and you just wanna go find out what's on that platform, amplifyaudiobooks.com will take you straight to that, uh, to take you straight there, and my author website is beckyparkergeist.com. Um, you can find all of that just going to, proaudiovoices.com. That's kind of our home base. Yeah,
Sounds great. And thank you very much for your time, Becky. And for
thank you.
anyone who's listening or watching, thank you for joining us for another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. And until we meet again,
Thanks so much. It's been fun.
thank you.